Hi, welcome to Split Atom. One of the jokes about home labs is there's multiple gateway drugs that turn this from a hobby to an addiction. For some people, it's Plex and building out their movie collection so they can stream it throughout their house or even to their friends and their mobile devices. For other people, it's they become data hoarders and they want to store copies of all the data they've ever produced, their pictures and documents and everything, and even pulling down websites and YouTube videos and things like that and making their own copy of the internet within their lab. For me, it's the ability to store real time data from all over the place and be able to visualize it, do some analytics on it, and then maybe even some reporting or some alerting in the future. From an architectural perspective, what this looks like is I've got a variety of devices, Raspberry Pis, servers, and appliances in my house. I want to take telemetry data off of those devices and send that into a time series database, that thing there in the middle. And then from that database, I want to hang off other applications that I can use to visualize it or do analytics. What I'll show you today is how I'm using Grafana to do some real time dashboards off of that data. So to do this, and you can do this, there's a variety of different ways you can do this. For me to be able to show this to you, what I've done is I've set up a set of VMs on my virtual cloud using Proxmox. I've got a monitoring a server that I'm calling monitoring. It's a little CentOS VM. It's got one CPU and 1 gig of memory. As you're thinking of if you're thinking of building this out, you can stay really small on the compute side with this. Even on the RAM side, I think on my personal one, Sentinel is my personal one, and I believe on that machine I'm running two CPUs and 2 gig of RAM. So you can stay pretty small with this, but it's also very powerful too. So I've also built out. I've got 3 other VMs that are just going to be normal little servers out there that I'm going to pull telemetry data off in the future and show you how to bring that into this architecture. So to make this easy on everybody, I've created a GitHub that's got all the code you're going to need for this. It's in my GitHub repo at Splitty Atom, and then the name of this repo is called Sentinel, and it's going to have all the Docker compose and a setup file and everything for you. So to go and work on the machine, so I've got that one machine I'm going to work on. I would use Terminal. Some of y'all may be more comfortable using Terminal. I'm going to do it with VS Code today because I think it's a little easier to work with sometimes, and it's a little more elegant when I want to show stuff. So I'm going to create a new window, and I'm going to use that remote SSH plugin that's part of VS Code and set up that connection. So I'm going to connect to that server, and then that server, I'm going to do, it's going to be root at, and the IP address of that machine is right there. Right there. We'll copy that and paste that in. And make the connection. Oh. All right. It's asking me for my password, so I'm going to put my password in. And I can see it's made the connection for me. And I'm going to open my browser, or the file browser. Just open the folder to root. And then I've also got a terminal session that opened here. So I can see that I'm in root, and I can see what's out there already. I've got a couple files. What I want to do is I'm going to use GitHub and pull this repo across. So let me go get the link for the repo. And I'm going to say git clone. And then what this has done, if you've not used Git before, I'm just cloning. So I've gone out to the internet, to GitHub, and I'm cloning this repo and bringing all the files across. So if I do an ls now, I can see that Sentinel directory is out there. Let's see the end of that. And we can see I've got the files there. So to make this easy, what I've done is I've created a setup. I have created a setup file that's going to do some of the pulling across the Docker images, running Docker Compose to bring up the stack, and then it sets some permissions on one of the directories for Grafana. Before I run that, though, let's go look at the Docker Compose file. Make this a tad bit bigger. And just to kind of talk through what's in the Docker Compose. So if you haven't used Docker Compose before, Docker Compose is a way to kind of orchestrate bringing up multiple Docker containers, handle some of the networking and storage from those containers, but kind of build it kind of as almost infrastructure as code kind of thing. So in this Docker Compose, I can see I'm bringing up an InfluxDB container. I'm assigning some ports to it to my host machine. I'm also mapping out some storage for the data, so I can make that data persistent even when I bring down this Docker stack and bring it back up. When I bring it back up with the latest container for Influx, it's still going to be able to use all that data I've pulled over the history of this application. I've got Telegraf, and Telegraf is one of the tools I'll use to. It'll be one of the agents that I'll deploy to pull metric data off of different devices. Chronograph, which is kind of like the UI. A lot of people don't use this, but I like to have it handy just in case I need it. It's kind of the UI on top of Influx. And then finally, the last thing is Grafana, and that's some of the sexy cool of this. And this is where we'll get some of those real-time dashboards. And we're mapping out port 3000 for that. You could map it to port 80 if you want or something like that. I like 3000 is kind of the default port. All right, so now that we've seen the Docker Compose, let's go ahead and we're going to run the setup. So to run that SH file, I'm just going to do dot and setup.sh. And we're going to run that. And what's happening is Docker is going and pulling all the information about how to build these containers. And it's built. You see, it's built Grafana. Now it's building the InfluxDB container, and it'll do this pretty quick. Now we've got a couple more that's going to come up. Now it's got Telegraf, and the last one will be Chronograph. All right. So it's bringing that up, and then what's happening is it ran the Docker Compose step. It brought up all of the containers, and then the final thing it did is I ran a little curl command against InfluxDB. That ran a query to show all the databases, just so I can see that everything's up and running. Now, if you've used Docker Compose, or if you haven't used Docker Compose before. Right now I'm going to do Docker containers list, and I can see all the containers I have up and running right now. If I wanted to bring this stack down and shut it down, so I go Docker compose down. So that would bring the whole stack down and stop the application. But I want to go ahead and bring that up so we can have some fun. So I'm going to go Docker compose up. And if you do it just like this is kind of nice to be able to debug. If you run it like this in kind of attached mode, you'll get all the logs for all the different containers as they're running, and you can see all the stuff. So you can use this to kind of debug if you're having a problem. I'm going to do a Control C because I already know it's running well. And I'm going to run it again. This time I'm going to run it with a -D, and that runs it detached. So you won't see all the log data come up. So we're going to bring that up, and now we've got it up and running. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to jump over into the browser, and the first thing I'll show you is chronograph. So I'll put in the IP address of this machine. I believe it was 216. And then chronograph, the IP or the port I did for chronograph is going to be 8888. And so we have chronograph up, and I'm going to do the get started. And we'll have to do the connection. So when you're doing the connection, you can do, there's a few different ways you can do it. On this one, I'm going to do the IP address of the machine. So 192.168.1.216. I'm going to call it Influx. The database name that I'm going to connect to will be Telegraf. I've done it. I haven't done a username and password. You can go set those. I'll show that in a later video. Since this is inside the house, I don't really put a username and password on it. I'll hit add connection. My connection's up. I'm going to skip this for the dashboards. I'm going to skip for capacitor. View all the connections. And what I can do is I can do explore, and I can start to see, make that a little bigger for y'all. I can see that I've got a couple databases that are there. I've got an internal monitor one and a Telegraf one. If I click into that, I can see that Telegraf, and it's and I can start to see some of the schemas that are out there for it, for the different measurements, tag data, and then the fields that are inside of that. But let's make this a little cooler, and let's actually go bring this up in Grafana. So same thing, I'm going to go the IP address of the machine. And this time we're going to do port 3000. And so we've brought up Grafana. So the first time you bring Grafana up, it's got a default password and, or username and password. It's admin. So we'll put those in. The first time you do it, let me close all this. The first time you do it, it's going to ask you to reset your password. I'm going to go ahead and set up my password. And confirm my password. Hit submit. Oh, I didn't match them. All right. So now I'm in Grafana. And the first thing you have to do is you've got to go start configuring your data sources. We only have one data source today, and the data source, each time you create a new database in Influx, that's going to be a new data source for you here. So today we've got a couple we're going to do. So we're going to do, or actually we'll just do one today. And so we'll add the data source. We're going to select InfluxDB. We'll hit select. So it's InfluxDB. This one we're going to call InfluxDB, and I think I call it Telegraf, because really it's the Telegraf that's on this this virtual machine. So then and we're not aggregating a bunch of virtual machines with this one. We're just doing this one first VM. So the URL for this is going to be HTTP. :// and if you're running it on the same VM, you could do the IP address, or you could do InfluxDB. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stay with the IP address because I think that's a good habit to be in. So 192.168.1.216, and the port. So the port for InfluxDB is 8086. I'll put 8086, and make sure you do this because this one's got me a few times. So leave everything else alone until you get down here to the bottom here, and on the bottom you're going to use, I believe it's called Telegraf. Is that? Yeah. So Telegraf is the name of the database. So we're going to type Telegraf here, and it's Telegraf with an F. Just make sure I've messed that up before too. And then at the bottom, so we've got everything in. There's not a username and password for it. We're going to save and test it. And we can see we got all green. The data source is working. All right. So now we can go and we can add a dashboard. You can build your own dashboards in Grafana, and that's something you may want to do in the future. One of the great things to get started is Grafana has they've got a great community that's out there building dashboards. And if you're using the same database schema as other people, so I'm using Telegraf. Telegraf is pulling the metrics across. If I'm using the same schema as others, I can use the dashboards they've already posted out there. So I've actually, in my notes, if you go through the notes, I've actually put the one of the IDs. So what you do is when you, let me copy this ID real quick. When you're looking at the dashboards out here, and say if I wanted to pull this guy's dashboard, there's an ID here, and you use that to import. So that I've already in the notes, I put this 5955 as one of the IDs. So I'm going to go use that in here. So I click import. I put the that ID number and hit load. And so it's going and it's pulled from Grafana.com. It's pulling that dashboard information. It gives it a name. It's called System Metrics for this one. It'll throw it in the general folder. Don't worry about that. I'll select which of my Influx databases I'm going to use here, and I'll hit import. And so I've imported it across, and now you can see that I've already got data here. So I've got, it already knows this server. It knows it's been up for 2 minutes, 45 seconds, and it's got other data that's already starting to populate in here. So, so we have that. So we can, and you can do this every time we bring new servers in. We can bring those in. I can set this down to 5 seconds if I want, and do the last 5 minutes. And let me select all. Oh, there we go. So now we can see that data is now coming across from that server. So hopefully this gives you kind of a basic understanding of how to do this. I'm going to do, the next video I do will be how to connect other servers. So other servers, deploy Telegraf onto it, and bring that data across into another set of dashboards I could get to look at all the other servers within my infrastructure, or within my HomeLab, sorry. So again, thanks for watching. You can follow me on Twitter, and then also you can, any of the code that I do in my demos, I will publish out on GitHub, and you can get that at github.com/splittingatom. So I appreciate the time, and hope to see you come back. Please hit subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Thanks a lot.